Um, Yeah, with this, we have found with many of our customers, once they've implemented bind, I think our statistics have come back. I said this in my first session that about 95% of our customers will find regressions or calculation engine changes with every single business objects database or upgrade that they do. So here we'll explore maybe why we would use bind for regression testing, when you should do it, and we also have a use case, and then we'll show you with a demo. Pauline will jump into the solution and show how 360 eyes and 360 bind can work together to automate this process for you. So first, Pauline, why would you use an automated solution?
Right. So, yeah, sometimes we ask people, how do they currently do testing? And it's typically manual. Maybe you run a report in one environment, save the PDF, run the report in the other environment, save the PDF, and then do a side by side. Hopefully you have two screens, or maybe you make them small enough so you can see them side by side. Our CEO has talked about how he's used to print things off and then hold them up to the light to see where the differences are. I mean, that's one way. But it's manual. It's not something that is repeatable. It's definitely time consuming. So using an automated solution takes out that manual work. It will improve the user's confidence because you're going to catch all the regressions, and it's certainly going to save you time and money and even resources to implement a regression test, an automated solution like 360 bind.
Yeah. So then some of the times you would do it, would it be just with a business objects upgrade? But no, not necessarily, right? It could be your database upgrade or migration, ETL update, universe changes. We have several customers that we're working right now who are migrating to Snowflake. So it's a huge difference for them when they're moving from like Teradata, Oracle, and now all their data is going to be coming out of Snowflake. And what difference is that going to impact, their reports on the before and after? And they're finding there's a lot of issues that they need to deal with and fix from moving from one thing to the next.
Right, right. So yeah, it's not just a business objects update that you would need to do this. Yeah, any changes behind the scenes, like you said, with the database, either upgrading the database to the latest version or going to a new database platform like Snowflake. But yeah, ETL updates, universe changes. As I was a universe developer and report developer, and we would make a join change in the universe just to fix this one issue, one object. Okay, I tested it, looks good, move it in. Well, the regression testing needed to be done to make sure that I didn't negatively impact the change, didn't negatively impact any of the other reports, and that's a lot of times where things go wrong. You're trying to resolve one issue, and it has a downstream effect on other parts of the system. So regression testing and having an automated way gives you confidence to make those changes, do the testing, and then move it into production once you've validated everything's returning as expected.
All right. So before we jump into the demo, we're just going to walk through just a couple slides here on an actual use case. So this is France Agramir. Is that how you say it, Pauline? Discussions on how you say that. But these are the key facts. This is what their environment looked like prior to utilizing the solution. They had 12,000 documents, just over 700 users, about 70 universes. They were going from 3.1 to 4.2. So Pauline, why don't you take us through some of the steps that they did, and then we'll show the ultimate results of how that ended up when they were done.
Okay. Yeah, so first what they did was they used, determined which reports they wanted to include in their testing. So they had 12,000 documents. Obviously, you're not going to test all 12,000. So 360 Eyes is very useful. That extracts all the metadata, all the usage, information about what's being used, what's not being used. So they used Eyes to determine, which reports are most frequently used. Obviously, the ones that haven't been been used in 2 years, it doesn't make sense to include those in the testing. Any duplicate reports, if you've got 5 reports that are all the same, you only need to test one of them because you're going to get the same result out of all of them. So they were able to narrow down and focus on what they wanted to include in the testing. So in this case, it was about 1 to 2% of the document. So it was about 240 or so that they included in their testing out of that 12,000. So they made sure they had a representative sample of their environment. So, the set that they selected were pointing to, universes, data sources across their environment. So they were ensured that they had that representative sample. They first used 360 Bind then to run the comparison. So scheduling with 360 Bind, you're scheduling your documents within 360 Bind. It's similar to how you'd schedule it in BusinessObjects, where it's creating an instance. And you select what you want to compare. So you can compare just the data if you want, but if you're also interested in the structure, the style, or even the images, if you've got graphs, you can also include that as well. And we'll show you that once we get into the live demo.
And that's scheduling too. That's repeatable then, right? You can set it up.
Exactly. Right. So if you include 100 documents, or in their case 240 in your task, once you've gone through that, you could always rerun it. And then you have that repeatable process. It's all set up. So every time you make a change, quickly run it, get your results, and move on. Definitely speeds up the process going forward.
Right.
Okay, and then so out of that testing they did, they found there were 28 documents that had regression. So out of that 240, 24 of them they had data and image regressions, and then which would have been the charts, and then only 17 had data only. So it looks like so there were about 7 charts that had some issues, but that is what they found out of the total of their testing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the example, what they actually found were this this round function. So these are used in their variable syntax, and it was caused by a calculation engine change. And again, they were going from XI 3.1 to 4.2, so probably more calculation engine changes than typical, but it does happen. So they were able to search for that. I can show real quick what that looks like within 360 Eyes. Here. So you can actually look for where those where those variables are used. I think I might have an example here. So 360 Eyes extracts all the metadata from your reports, and then you can do impact analysis. And in this case, they found that the variables were where they found all their regressions. So what they were able to do is this particular report, you can filter it on the syntax of the variable. So I can put in, that was that round function. Maybe I'll include, any functions where count is used. I'll just include that. Nope, that's the value. And this is my name. Yeah, I'll just take that out. So I can search for either variable name, I can search for the value, so just a portion of the syntax of the variable, and this will return all of the reports that use that particular, so I look for count, so anywhere count is used in the variable. So they were able to find the impact. So even though they only were testing on a subset of their reports, they can find where else those regressions were in their environments. So
Those
that was really
reports are pre-canned within 360 Eyes too, right?
correct. Yes, that's right. Yeah, those were already available, and you just need to pass the information that you're looking for to filter on.
Okay. And this was the results.
Right.
What do
So
we
they
have?
were, so they, so using Bind and Eyes, and now I think about it, they also used 360 view. I'll show that as well. So they were able to identify the documents that they want to include in testing using 360 eyes. Took about an hour. They ran the report, the export and comparison tasks. Setting that up took about an hour and a half. Identified all the regressions. Again, doing that analysis took about an hour. Then they looked at, what was the cause of the regressions. That's where they found it was that variable syntax that they needed. Looked at the impact analysis on all their documents. So once they identified which ones were impacted, then they want to make sure, okay, we're only to look at the ones that are being used, and then if there are duplicate documents, don't worry about those. So really in all, it took about 4 hours. They were able to also use 360 view to bulk update the report variables. So you can export all of your report variables from 360 view and actually bulk update them. So I can show that. I think this is my next screen. No, I don't have the screen. I can show what that looks like real quick. Okay, so with 360,
Never works the first time.
Okay. So here I am. So here I am in 360. So with 360 view, you can actually export. Let me just pick a single. Let me pick a single folder here. And if I go to documentation, I can document all the Webby document variables. So in that particular folder, I can document all those reports, and their variables will be listed. Of course, it gives me an error when I do this. Let's see here. Didn't like that. Let me grab my. Okay, so here's my export. Here, let me slide this over. Okay, so here's my export. It listed all the variable names. If I scroll to the left, you'll see the folder. In this case, there were 2 reports, and it tells me the formula. So I can come in here and do a bulk update on this. If I want to make any changes, save it, and I can actually then bulk update under here. There is a bulk update, update Webby documents. All I do is import that Excel file, and it'll bulk update those report variables. So very helpful if that is your your regression that you find is with report variables. It's definitely helpful in that case.
Very.
Okay, now I have to. Sorry, I seem to be having window issues today. Okay.
All right. So 4 hours seems pretty good. Pauline, have you heard some horror stories of how long some of this kind of a typical scenario may take if they're doing manual testing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, you hear people that are doing upgrades and they say, oh, it took us a year to upgrade. Well, installing and update a business object certainly doesn't take a year, but the testing is really where, and the planning for that and getting all the information and that's really what takes the longest. And so sometimes they're just hesitant to move forward because they want to make sure that they're fully testing and the users don't lose confidence in the data. So a lot of times, yeah, I mean, you hear those horror stories about how long it takes. So that's where 360 bind definitely beneficial. The steps are you select and export. You export a set of documents. So in the first environment, so say you're upgrading from 4.2 to 4.3, we just heard that 4.3 is coming out on this Friday. So if any of you are planning on moving to that version, definitely want to do your testing before and after. So if you're doing an in-place upgrade, you can do the schedule the list, schedule your set of documents before the change, schedule the set after the change. 360 bind also allows you to do it in 2 different environments. So if you have 4.2 in one environment and you've got 4.3 in another environment, you can compare those documents in the 2 different environments. So those are the typical scenarios that people do those testing, and then you run the comparison, and we're going to look at go into that and take a look at that. But this is what a comparison looks like. So left hand side, imagine that's 4.2, right hand side 4.3. Everywhere you see that kind of peach orange color, those are the differences in the data. So my title says title on the left, it says new title on the right, so something changed with that. You can see the quantity sold column. Looks like it's got wrapped text on the right, and then the data is different in that revenue column. And you can also see on the right hand side, the images are highlighting those red squares, showing that there are differences in that graph. So we will jump in and take a look at what this looks like. Yep.
And so first you would start with some of those 360 eyes reports, right? And you determine which subsection of reports that you want to look at. And then this is from the point of maybe doing the schedule, setting everything up once you determined what reports you want to see.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So you've used eyes, decided what you want to include in the testing. So I have recorded this because Murphy's Law, if something goes wrong. So here we are. This is 360, and you're going to go to regression testing export tasks, and this is where you schedule your tasks. So schedule a set of reports. Customers, you maybe create a 100 or 50 reports. In this example, I did a set of Oracle. So we have a lot of customers, like Lisa mentioned, that are going from Oracle to Snowflake, and so they're comparing, okay, this is what my set of reports looks like pointing to Oracle. This is what the set of reports looks like pointing to Snowflake. Do the comparison and find those differences. It might be at the database level there are issues, maybe at the report variable level, maybe it's at the universe object level. Identify those issues, and this will help you automate that. So I'll show you what one of these looks like. So you're essentially, so I selected 3 documents. So these are 3 Webby documents. You can compare Webby, Crystal, or analysis for Office documents with 360 bind. In this example, it's just 3, but typically, most customers will, set up tasks with groups of different reports. It might be, like I said, 50 or so to include in the testing. If there are, these are just the export options. So we have projects that allow you to control access to the results, and you set up categories, just a way of grouping your tests. And there are different ways to format to view the report. So the export format is paginated XML or XML for Webby documents. That's the best way to compare Webby documents. And we introduced this paginated XML option in our new version of 360 bind. So if any of you have used the 360 bind legacy version, this is a new option, and this is really beneficial for customers that have large reports. So if you have reports that return a lot of data, a lot of times that was too much to bring back to the browser because it all had to render on the screen at once. This paginated XML option allows you to page by page, it'll load the report page by page. It does lazy loading, so you don't have to pull in that whole report. So this has been really beneficial for customers with large documents. Then you include the prompts. So if you have any prompts on your reports, you enter the values. If there were saved prompts, those would show up as well. But those are the that's where you would put the values are in that you want to schedule the reports. And so that's what, then you would do the same thing with the second set of reports. Maybe you're connecting to another environment. I can log in to a second environment here, and all the results get saved to a certain network share location for the comparison. So I run that set. So then when this is over, I've got 2 sets. I've got my Oracle exports, and then I've got my Snowflake. And now I'm ready to do that comparison. So I go to the regression testing comparison tasks. Okay, and I'm just going to open up a task that's already finished. And this is my result. Okay, so opening that. So this is what the result looks like. You can either have it sent to you by email, so you know, if it's running through 100 documents, it's going to take some time to run through those. There's a setting where you can say, okay, I want to run 4 documents at a time. It's not going to run them all at once. So, but you can increase it or decrease that number. And this is what the results look like. This can be emailed to a set of users. So if all of you are looking at these comparisons, that can be emailed, and then you can view. So it shows there are no matching documents, so 3 non-matching. And so expand here. So left-hand side, this is my 4.2 results. Right-hand side, 4.3. And in this case, if you see at the top, there's this orange bar. This is the only difference. It's the title that was different. I do have 2 tabs. So in the bottom left, you see sales and sales by year. Both of those are orange. That means that there are differences in both of those tabs. And so I can toggle between those. Yep. And so going to the second page, I see the sales revenue. The column is all orange, so something's different. At first glance, I see there's on the right-hand side there's a dollar sign, and on the left there was not a dollar sign. So maybe something changed in the data, you know, and maybe the format of the universe object. And when you click on that, this is also a new feature if any of you have the legacy version of Bind, is by clicking on one of the regressions, so where you see those highlighted fields, it shows you what the difference is. So in this case, it's data. So if it were structure, so if something changed with the width, or you know, something in the structure of the report, that would be highlighted. If something changed in the style, that will be highlighted, and you control what you want to compare. So maybe you don't care about structure and style, just the data, then that's all you compare is the data. So you pick and choose what you want to compare. Okay. And then again, this is the paginated XML option. Those little lines, those orange lines will jump you to the differences in the document. And then this other nice feature that was added is the pages. So on the bottom right, you see I clicked on the pages, and every page that has a regression will be highlighted in orange. So I don't have to go through every page, scroll to find the highlighted field. I can immediately jump to the page that has the regression. So this has really simplified things and made it a lot easier to find those regressions, to locate those differences, so that you can move on with your testing. Okay, and then one other piece of the comparison that a lot of customers like is this execution time. So on the left-hand side, it was 17 seconds, right-hand side, 8 seconds. I had set a threshold to say, okay, anything outside of this threshold, I think it was 20%, I want it to be highlighted as a difference. So maybe all the data is the same on the report, but the execution time is different. So that will be highlighted. And this is important often if you're setting up a new platform. You want to make sure you configured everything correctly. You know, if you're getting slower performance on the new platform, you know, maybe you didn't add enough memory to the machine. Maybe you need to configure your webby processes differently. You know, maybe on the database side, you need to tune the database. It needs to be sized differently. So these are all important. Moving platforms, moving to new database versions, platforms as well. So in this example, the Oracle to Snowflake, you know, you want to make sure you're getting similar performance. Moving to the cloud, a lot of customers, you know, want to set that level of expectation. You know, okay, don't expect a lot of times in the cloud, they don't run as fast. So this kind of sets that expectation to say, okay, the reports aren't going to run as fast, or maybe you can do something to improve that performance if you do find it's slower than expected. So that's a nice feature to have as well to include with the comparison. And then again, I'm scrolling through each of those documents to see where those differences are. I'm just going to jump to And here, okay. So I did want to show where I set those comparisons and where I can. So if I go back to that comparison, I'm going to look at where I've selected what I want to compare. Okay, so in this case, this is what's being compared. So compared data, that's typically most people want to know, is the data different? Compare numeric values, that's a specific use case. So if on one report the value showing up as 24 and the other report showing up as 24.0, it is the same numeric value. If you don't want that flagged as a difference, you would check that. Typically, I would think you'd want it flagged as a difference, so that's probably not used as often. Ignore white spaces. So if there are white spaces that don't change the structure of the report, you can choose to ignore those. This image comparison level, that is, if you have graphs on the reports, it'll do a pixel by pixel comparison, and you can select the level of precision that you want. Style, again, that's if there are different widths of the columns, if there's a layout of the report, it'll highlight those differences if you're interested in that. The structure, I'm sorry, the style, sorry, the style is more the fonts. So if something's bolded or a different font style, and then structure is more the layout and the height and width of the columns. And then here's where that execution time is to highlight those differences where the execution time is outside the threshold. Okay. I guess I'm talking. So the last, yeah, so then the last thing is the results. So you can send the results by email. Again, you can send it to a group of users. What you'll get is a link that will bring you to those result sets. And you can also control who has access to that. So if you don't send that to, by default, if you send that link to anyone, whoever has access to that link can see those results. So if they don't have access to the data, you probably don't want to send them that. But there are other ways. We've got a lot of security features and different ways you can implement security with 360 bind.
That was actually one of the questions too that popped in. So keep your
Okay.
question in, but it was around, if they want their business users to test, how does Bind leverage the security levels that they may have in place already?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, someone asked about if there were any row or column limits for regression testing, and no, I haven't. I haven't seen, I've seen very large documents be compared, but yeah, I don't think there are any row or column limits. The size of the files are determined by your Webby processing server. So when those reports get run in Bind, it's using the business objects processes. So if your processes only allow for a 50 meg file and you're trying to generate a 100 meg file, then it's going to prevent you from doing that. But that can certainly be configured to be increased if needed. Okay, I think that is all for the demo. Let's see here.
And keep your questions coming as well, so we can get to that section. I think one of the questions you already covered on how to schedule reports and select prompts. You kind of went through those steps, right?
Yeah, and I could show that in more detail. Well, yeah, I guess I didn't really show how to select reports. I could definitely show that. Let's see here.
Schedule reports and prompts. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely show that. So yeah, there are a couple different ways to schedule the reports, but so this regression testing export tasks is where you select your reports. So if I create a new task, and again, I could schedule it at a later time if I wanted to, or just schedule it now. This is where you select your documents. So in my case, I could select search by folder name or by the document name. So I have a folder called Oracle. I'll search for that. Maybe not. Oh. Okay, maybe I'm in a different environment. So here's where all of my, so I searched by folder name and listed all the documents that were in that folder. I can add those documents to my comparison task. I actually don't want that one, so I'll remove that. So just these three were selected. This is where I select my project and my category. So these are just these are created and you're given access to based on what you have access, on security. And again, when I log in, I'm logging in with my BusinessObjects credentials. So those documents that I selected here, if I search for a folder I don't have access to, I'm not gonna see them. I'm only gonna see the documents that I have access to. So a lot of our customers will give this tool to their end users, so it's not necessarily only used by the administrator or the developers. It can be given to the business areas. They can set up their tests, and it's controlled by, they're running the reports like they would through the Launchpad. So if there's security row level restrictions in place, those will get applied, and they'll only be able to see the documents that they have access to. Okay, and so yeah, so I select those documents. These are my export options. The prompts, so this is where I would enter any values for my prompts. These are already populated. You can see, and these are italicized because these are optional prompts, so I don't need to provide a value if I don't want to. You can filter your data to with any object on your document. You can apply any input controls if you have any, and then setting up notifications when those jobs are complete. So once this is scheduled, it's very easy to repeat it. Okay, so somebody is asking if I have a list. Okay, so somebody's asking if we have a list of all the 360 products. Yes, we do. Let me find, let me pull that up for you. Interesting, I don't think we have it in this particular, let me find. Did we include that slide, Lisa? I don't actually think we did. Let me grab that real quick. Okay, so let me just grab a slide that has all of our solutions. Yeah, so just I'll share this real quick. So yeah, this is a slide that has all of our solutions. So bind is the one we're covering right now. This does the automated regression testing. And then we've got cast. There's a session later today that's the scheduling and bursting solution. That will be the last session of the day today. Eyes, so that's a solution that does the metadata. That's the one we used, or this particular customer that we shared the use case with used in order to identify which documents they wanted to include. Live is our monitoring and alerting solution. Verse is a versioning solution, so you can version all your Webby documents, all of your universes, and you can kind of see over time what's been changed. You have that traceability, and you can easily roll back if you need to compare what the differences are, that kind of thing. View does the bulk updates. So that's where I showed you could bulk update your Webby report variable. So in the use case that we shared, there was some issues with the regressions on the report variables, and so they were able to bulk update those with 360 View. 360 Plus does the backup, promotion, and DR. And again, we have a session on that. I think that might be next after this. I'll have to check, but we do have a session on disaster recovery. And then Universe, the 360 Univ is a tool that allows you to export all of your Universe objects, classes, all the details about your universe, and then you can actually bulk update them. So if you have a need to update object descriptions. You want to remap all of the SQL if you're moving to a new database and you've got a new table. I've had customers that, you know, they're moving to new tables, and instead of having to rebuild the universe, they're just going to remap all their objects in bulk. So that's an option as well. Okay, so hopefully that covered.
Yeah, I think we were last left off on our final poll.
Okay, let me switch to that. Okay.
And this poll is just for us to get a better understanding of what brought you here. If you can launch that one.
Yes.
Yeah. And just curious to know why you're on this particular session. And we have, you know, many people who are just increasing their knowledge, would love to get more email information, don't have immediate needs, but you would like a demo. You're planning a project, and maybe you are going to do a, you know, 4.3 upgrade or move in your database, and that's you'd like to schedule a demo. And in the same aspect too, if you're planning something quicker and you'd like to get some trial keys, that's definitely an option, of course. We do have a very busy POC and trial calendar, kind of full for the next several weeks. So if you do have some immediate needs, give us your name and number in the chat box and let us know, and we will get that scheduled and set up for you. If we can get Pauline or Yasmina back on with you to get to a trial of the software set up and installed. But was there any more questions that we can help answer here, Pauline? I see one.
Sorry, yes, so yeah, there's one about the UI. Does the UI allow you to accept a difference detected between reports and remove that difference from the screen? Not as it is today. I know there are some we have in our roadmap to maybe highlight different like fields. Okay, we know this is going to be different on all the reports. I want to ignore that during testing. That is a potential, but yeah, it's more getting that information. There will be in the next release that's coming in July, there'll be an export of all the differences, and so you'll have an Excel spreadsheet when you receive the email, and so you can kind of glance through and see, okay, yeah, I know what that difference is. I'm just going to move on to that, so you can kind of instead of having to go through and check the report if you're already aware there's a difference there, that kind of gives you the ability to do that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. Is there any more that popped in?